so much.
Thank you, Blanca. Next, we have Simón Porras Rodríguez. You may begin.
Yes, thank you. And especially I want to thank for the invitation, the comrades of Socialist Resurgence. I'll make some general comments in this presentation and afterwards go into more specific aspects of this, what we consider a truly revolutionary wave that is having a huge impact in Latin America. We have seen the images from Ecuador, Chile, Colombia, Haiti also, and it's very important to link this process to what is happening worldwide in a wider point of viewpoint. We have seen that since 2018, we have had a huge mass struggle in the Middle East, Northern Africa, even, and although to a lesser extent, Europe and Asia. So we consider that this general or this tendency to generalize massive struggles has to do with a situation in which world capitalism is. This 2007 capitalist crisis hasn't yet been closed altogether. This last decade has been a period in which governments have tried to impose austerity plans and the labor reforms to increase exploitation and try to overcome what we consider to be the root cause of the crisis, which is the tendency of a declining profit rate. So this attempt by governments has rather exacerbated class struggle, and in general has not been successful in overcoming this root cause of the crisis. Lenin has a definition of a revolutionary situation, which he uses in his work, The Collapse of the Second International from 1915, which he describes as a crisis on the top, a crisis of the bourgeoisie and its political apparatuses, a worsening of the misery for those below, which drives the masses to independent historical action. This revolutionary situation does not translate immediately to a triumphant revolution, because this outcome depends on a subjective factor, which is how strong are the revolutionary actions by the masses to bring down governments. I think that this definition by Lenin of a revolutionary situation is present in many Latin American countries, and there is a tendency for this sort of situation to come and present itself in many countries. Therefore, we can speak of a world revolutionary situation, not just in Latin America. Also, I think that we have to see these rebellions in the context of the crisis of the so-called progressive governments. These progressive or class collaboration governments, which came to power through electoral means in the first decade of this century, in a similar situation to what we are seeing now. There were big popular rebellions in Argentina, Ecuador, Bolivia. Even the defeat of the military coup in Venezuela in 2002 can be considered part of this. And all of these governments, they benefited from the rising prices of commodities and applied some rent redistribution policies. But in the last years, the pink tide receded as a consequence of applying austerity plans and criminalization of protest. We saw in many countries an electoral expression of punishment, but although it was seen by some tendencies in the left and some analysts as a turn to the right, we rather analyzed it as a part of a polarization process. And we think that the latest rebellions tend to confirm this perspective. It's an open perspective, not one of turn to the right. I will later go into more specific aspects of this revolutionary or rebellion wave in Latin America.
All right, thank you. Everyone's finishing early. Next, we have Jaime González. Jaime, I think. Oh, you're still muted, Jaime.
I had my microphone off. Per your instructions and didn't turn it on. I thank also Socialist Resurgence for the invitation, for their kind invitation. And I first want to point out that the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, its initials in Spanish are CEPAL, has recently published its overview of the social situation in Latin America for 2019. This region continues to have the highest inequality, or if you prefer, the worst wealth distribution ratio in the world. Poverty and extreme poverty within the population have been growing since 2012, after a period of significant reduction from 2002 till 2012, especially from 2002 to 2008. And there are many other quite worrying, disquieting tendencies in human rights, criminality, healthcare, economic opportunities, and environmental destruction, to mention just the most important or the most salient of these situations. We should bear in mind, of course, that the region is very varied, is widely varied, so the rates vary widely as well. But as a whole, the region, we can say this, we can give these indexes. The instability we have seen since so-called left progressive regimes, there are other terms for them, but this is one of the most widely used. These progressive regimes began to falter, and several of them began to be defeated either by constitution, some legal or legalistic way, or also because they were not able to respond to the needs of their populations. So we are seeing a big political destabilization in several countries because of the shortcomings of these so-called left progressive regimes, even though some of them had for a time spectacular results, like Brazil's growth of 9% for a certain period, which later went down. And when you have this sorts of upswings and downswings, this creates tremendous destabilization in the region. We are also seeing the consequences of economic factors. One I would like to point out, which is very important, and it is the introduction of labor-saving technology in economies such as Brazil, such as Mexico, and of course, as well as some others in different proportions, without the corresponding reduction in daily or weekly working hours. Young women and men who aspire to join the labor force have been most affected by this. So paradoxically, even investment has been a factor of destabilization. We are We are seeing many young women, young men who do not for whom the system has completely failed them. So we have this this setting in which all this is happening, something which must be in the minds of many of you is the horrible crime rates we are experiencing, which are the result of all this, which the speakers who have preceded me have spoken about it, and of course the factors I have just mentioned. In this situation with many gloomy aspects, with many which would seem very pessimistic, we have seen very important developments which have just been mentioned both in Chile and Colombia. We had not seen such.
And that is time.
Okay.
You'll get more time in discussion.